Y'all. Okay, look. Shout out to my Saras. They told me to watch Later Daters. Hold on a minute. Let me turn my fan off because I'm getting dizzy. Don't pay attention to what's going on behind me because I'm cleaning out my makeup and facial cleansing drawers, trying to get some organization. So it's all on the bed. But listen, so I'm watching the first episode that is focused on Suzanne, which I love because she reminds me of Blanche Devereaux, Southern Belle, just as quirky and gorgeous, and Anise, who is fabulous, and Nate Dogg, you know, shout out to my Army brethren and D9 brethren. But here, check it. I'm watching the one right now. Okay, so the first date with Suzanne and Frank. It was cute, but I could tell it started off kind of awkward. But what I love about the three men thus far, Nate, Suzanne's date, which is Frank, and Anissa's date, who is George, all three of them brought the ladies flowers. Okay. So it kind of goes to the mindset of men in a certain age, at a certain age. Whereas at these youngins, y'all would never. And even if they did, y'all women would clown them. But let's get into it. Okay, so Suzanne's date with Frank. I laugh because dating now, well, when I started dating my husband, at 51, it's so different. It's kind of like what the dating coach says. When you're dating in your 20s, you are basically a startup, you're building your company. But when you are dating in your 50s and 60s, it is a merger. You're bringing two companies together to merge a life potentially together. So the rules of engagement are a little bit different. And you're set in your ways. So there's a lot more compromise that needs to take place because, again, you're two companies, particularly if you've been married and had children. And then with Suzanne and Anise, both of them had the loves of their lives, was making a family, and they lost their husbands, so they are widows. And then you have Nate, who was that cute dog on the campus, and had a child, and then he later got married, and he alludes to it. He doesn't say infidelity, but he has trust issues, so there's definitely some things going on. But also by his story, he tells it that his daughter's mom was not completely forthcoming and or responsible. So, I love it because you see it through a different lens. One of the things also that cracks me up, though, dating in later in your life, is Frank is talking about the aches and the pains, his eyesight. Even Nate, he's in his 50s. He has had injuries jumping out of airplanes, and you can kind of see it when he walks. Okay. So there are things that, that you consider when you're older from a woman's perspective and a man's perspective that you would not consider when you're younger. Like when I met my husband has, he's a former football player in college, but he's a truck driver. So, he's had some hip issues and stuff like that, at first I noticed it, but now I don't. Now I don't. But it's just, I don't know. I know I'm rambling. But let's get down to the crux of it. This fool right here. Okay, listen. I know that with reality TV, there's a certain amount of editing going on here. But even with him, the flowers, now, even though, again, all three men brought the flowers, but his was a little chintzy, in my opinion. But anyway, when I first saw him, I'm like, this is a good looking guy. You understand me? Handsome silver fox. When she walks in and he's looking like, okay, giving that yummy look, I'm like, okay, there may be some chemistry there. So then he started asking some unbelievable questions. I was like, first question. Your three children by the same father. I'm like, how inappropriate is that? Next thing, have you had work done? Next thing, I like a little ghetto. I was undone. Undone. What in the world was you thinking? And here's the thing, George at 60, I can guarantee you he's brought that kind of energy to many of the dates. Thus, he on the market, in my opinion. Who does that on the first date? Man, I was undone. And then he has, some brown liquor. He was starting to feel a little bit of himself. But, Anise handled it like the lady in class act she is. But I'm hooked. I'm hooked already. I think we might even have to have some live conversations about this because, again, at this point in my life, and, shout out to my friends that I hung out with this past week at the earring exchange, because many of us 40s, 50s, some 60s, and the conversations are very different. They're very different in your 20s and 30s than they are when you're 40s, 50s, 60s. We talk about the change as in menopause and the effects therein. I ain't gonna go into it, look it up. The effort that it takes to stay in shape, to be appealing, because many of them were single, but even the ones of us that are married, realizing that you gotta make it do what it do. Because again, you realize you got more years behind you than in front of you, and you want to make them years count. So I am going to be giving some of my feedback on these episodes. I think it's fabulous. Fabulous! Hold on a minute. But yeah. Okay, but getting back to Nate Dogg, I was really excited. The first date he had with Latricia, they seemed to be, vibing, the smiling. Yeah, it just takes me back to my first date with Mr. Randolph. A lot of giggling, some moments of uncomfortability. Because I told you on our first date, dinner and a movie, I had bubble guts, which is, terrible. He he didn't forget he had paid for dinner, but, in the nervousness had left his credit card at the restaurant when we walked across the street to the movie. And then he's looking for his credit card and he couldn't find it. And so he walks back across the street to see if somebody turned in. I'm like, okay, this is not a good sign for our first date. So I decided to go ahead and pay for the movie tickets, say, well, at least we can salvage the night. Fortunately, somebody turned in his credit card. He insisted upon paying me back the money for the tickets. He walks me to my car after the dinner. But well, back it up. While we're in the movie, I'm getting bubble guts and have to excuse myself not once but twice. That was embarrassing because that had never happened. And we laughed about it and say, well, maybe we were both nervous in our own ways. And then he hugs me. That first hug is a little bit awkward, just like with Suzanne and Frank. He tries to reach in and kiss, like, slow your roll, buddy, slow your roll. And Mr. Randolph, he hugs me so tight that I could barely breathe. But I think this is going to be fun. But I said, go ahead and watch it. Y'all thank me later. I'm already hooked. What are your thoughts? Those are mine. Take that with you.